All school staff involved in the test administration are required to receive annual training in test security and confidentiality. Welcome to the 2015 General Security Training for State Assessment. Now, I'm not going to sit and read all of the slides to you, but you are responsible for knowing the content of the slides. STAAR Alt 2 has been completed by our life skills students and submitted to TEA and awaits scoring. STAAR A is the test that replaces the STAAR Modified, and it makes no distinction between special education students and 504 dyslexic students. It is the exact same test as the regular STAAR, less the field questions. And the test has embedded accommodations, even more accommodations than are listed in the students' IEPs or IAPs. The math assessment will align with the new math TEKS. Raw scores will likely be sent to our district testing coordinator in June. Passing standards will not be approved until this summer, and a pass-fail indicator will be sent to districts in September of 2015. If you choose to print extra reference materials for your classroom, be sure that you print from the TEA website for paper administrations of STAAR and from the Pearson website for the online administrations, which would be your STAAR A. This is very important. This information is not new to our 4th grade teachers. Students will write 2 essays, the first being a personal narrative and the second being an expository. The test design has been revised to accommodate this change. If you have any questions after reading your test administration manual, you are to ask me, not your coworkers, not your principal. My manual is about 10 times as thick and contains more detailed information than your test administration manual. If my manual does not contain the answer to your questions, I will contact our district testing coordinator and she will find someone who has the answer. There will be no excuse for not following the test administration manual. Chapter 39 of the Education Code requires the State Commissioner to establish procedures for test administration, including standardized procedures designed to ensure the security of the assessment instruments. Release or disclosure of confidential test content is a Class C misdemeanor and could result in criminal prosecution. These uniform procedures ensure the validity, reliability, and security of the STAAR assessment. It is very important that you follow your test administration manual exactly as it is written. You must use the current year's guide. Conduct that departs from these procedures is considered a testing irregularity. I am provided with a test security supplement and a coordinator's manual. Test administrators are expected to read and know test administration manuals and to ask questions if you are unsure of any required procedures. Again, do not ask your coworkers. Ask your campus or your district testing coordinator. Each time we have an irregularity, I am required by TEA to address it in future trainings. Irregularities that have occurred during the 5 most recent years of record include teachers erasing stray marks, students using devices during testing to contact parents to come and get them when they finished, student completing the wrong test on the wrong day, which comes back as an actively monitoring irregularity and comes back directly on the testing administrator. Sharpies were used on a state answer document, and I realized that we use Sharpies on our bubble sheets that we take our benchmarks on, but they may not be used on the state's documents, and the use of the wrong testing administration manual. Penalties for serious irregularities may include sanction of your teaching credentials. Additionally, the same penalties may be applied to any person who knows about a violation and fails to report it. While our district testing coordinator will be the one who must write and submit an online incident report, the report cannot be done without very specific information from the campus or teachers involved. You will be asked to submit a detailed write-up of the incident. If there is not enough information for the district testing coordinator to write a TEA required plan of action, your principal will be visited by TEA. Also, any irregularities in the test security or confidentiality may result in the invalidation of student results. TEA will make the determination whether or not irregularities or a breach of confidentiality will result in the invalidation of student results. Testing irregularities. Some serious irregularities include changing or altering an examinee's response or answer to a secure test item, providing or suggesting or indicating a test question response, aiding or assisting an examinee with a response or an answer to a secure test question, identifying incorrect responses for students. Solving questions in the test or scoring a student's test. And this means even if you were to come to me and say, I think they only missed 4 or 5, then I'm going to say to you, then how do you know that? Because that's the same thing as informally scoring a test. So no discussion, no looking at any of the students' answers or test items. Duplicating secure test materials. Viewing a test before, during, or after an assessment unless specifically authorized to do so. And that would be those people who are doing an oral administration, or if they are test administrators for an online administration, or if you're transcribing a test, a student's answers, or a written composition from a student's test paper to answer document, or disclosing the contents of any portion of a secure test. Failing to report to an appropriate authority that an individual engaged in any of the events listed above, fraudulently exempting or preventing a student from administration of a required state assessment, which would be like suggesting a student stay at home on the day of a test, encouraging or assisting an individual to engage in conduct described above. Some tips to avoid irregularities. Check your testing roster and check all accommodations. I'll give you a roster at the beginning of testing, the week of testing. You need to know the difference between accommodation and allowable procedures and materials. There's an entire section in your test administration manual about allowable procedures and materials. If you have a question about the difference between those two, you need to ask me. Create an accurate seating chart. Start and stop times must be recorded on the seating charts. First and last names of students must be on the seating chart. Any monitor that comes into your room to relieve you for a teacher break or a restroom break, you must have first and last names. The time period begins after the test administrator reads directions and tells students to begin. And this is written verbatim in your test administrator's manual. The test administrator must use a clock or a timer and announce the time left to the test in 1 hour interval. You are not allowed on your pie chart to divide up that last section and write it on there as 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, because that becomes a direct answer to lapse time or a math question that might involve quarter hour or half hour or 3/4 hours. Verify that students have recorded their responses on the answer document or on the online form. All responses must be recorded by the end of the 4-hour time period, and the exception would be except those students that you have to transcribe their answers, and those students for which we have documentation that they have extended time. Account for all test materials, yes, even your small groups, and immediately check in test and answer documents. Read and actually check off the checklist that I will give you. Everything that you must do will be itemized on that checklist. All staff are responsible for ensuring that materials are kept secure, and when not in use, all materials must be counted and checked into the testing coordinator and locked in the vault. And that is the vault that's inside my office, not the vault out in the front office. Time may be stopped for students at lunch and for medical emergencies requiring a visit to the nurse. We will not be allowed to send students from the classroom to the nurse. Time does not stop. That's not considered a medical emergency. If you have a genuine medical emergency, such as a student's nose starts bleeding, or they throw up, or you suspect that they have fever, then you will contact the hall monitor. That would be Mrs. Underwood, Coach Underwood, and she will have a walkie-talkie, and she will either contact Mrs. Rock, the principal, or myself, and we will have the nurse come to your room. Do not send a child down by themselves to the nurse's office. Remove all scratch paper and reference charts from the test booklets and return with the test materials, and I will be the one to destroy those. Annual training and signing of an oath of test security and confidentiality is required of all personnel who participate in test administration or handling of secure materials. This includes technology staff, custodians, maintenance, transportation, everyone. Paraprofessionals must also have the signature of a supervising certified teacher on their signed oath. If it is stated in your manual, you are solely responsible for knowing it. You will have the exact same manual for 1 year. Make your own notes, highlight, use stickies, etc. But you will be required to check it back into me at the end of April. Those involved in May testing, which will be our 5th grade teachers, I will check them back out to you at that time. Treat this test administration manual as if it were the Holy Grail. Test administration. Answer documents for 5th grade reading were printed prior to the decision to shift the administration date for 5th grade math to April. They will be labeled March 2015 Mathematics and Reading. They will contain sections for both mathematics and reading. Make sure students mark their responses to the reading questions on the reading portion of the answer document. Students should not mark any answers to the reading questions in the mathematics section. Leave the score code and the test taken information for mathematics blank. Actively monitor. March test booklets will include grade 5 reading only, even though the answer document will say math and reading. All the testing dates appear on the Google Calendar posted on our intermediate site. The same applies for grade 5 math administration that will take place on April 20th. The answer document will contain both reading and math. Be sure in April that your students do not mark answers for math in the reading section. Leave the score code and the test taken information for reading during that math administration, leave it blank. The district will receive 2 sets of test booklets in April. One will contain math only, and one will contain science only. Only reports for 5th grade reading will be returned to the district testing coordinator around April 15th. Paper reports for all other tests except for math should arrive around May 22nd. For the math, you will receive only a raw score in probably June, and then a pass-fail determination by next September. The test administration manuals. The scripts cover multiple subjects and multiple programs. To accommodate some differences in programs, the scripts use call-out boxes. The wider boxes have program-specific and subject-specific instructions. The table of contents points out pages for the guide to the test administration directions and for the scripts. This guide has general information about using the scripts. This section includes specific information about accommodations and oral administrations that must be read by the test administrator prior to the administration of that test. Allowable test administration procedures and materials are included. These are not accommodations. All accommodations must be brought to my office, and I will snap a thumbnail image. No exceptions. If you have a question about allowable materials, ask. STAAR A does not have a separate section of instructions. Appendix added on general tools are available in TestNav and emphasize use of the tutorials for students testing online. The details are pulled out in general scripts. Test administration manuals will be checked in and out because they must be retained for 1 year. If it appears on the student's IEP or IAP, it must be provided, whether or not the student chooses to use it. Dependence on the students to recreate the accommodation himself does not suffice. The teacher must supply all physical accommodations. Testing accommodations. Accommodations should be evaluated regularly to determine effectiveness. They should be documented in the appropriate student's paperwork. Accommodations are not necessary for every student. They are not changes in content. Accommodations should not be provided to a student without evidence of effectiveness from year to year. This is the reason that every grade level has created a Google document with all of those children who receive accommodations through special ed or 504 dyslexic services. This is why they have that document, and but you'll have to redo it year to year to prove that they need the accommodations that's listed. Students are not permitted internet access during testing. Also, electronic devices with internet or photography capabilities are not allowed. For online administration, record the accommodation that is documented, even if the student did not use the accommodation during the testing. STAAR A will be administered online and will include online tools, embedded accommodations to selections and test questions, and accessibility features. Some of the tools will be an answer eliminator. That doesn't mean it's going to take out a wrong answer. It just means that the student can elect to put an X beside an answer choice if they would like to eliminate it. Highlighters, erasers, pencils, notepad, dot tools, line tools, rulers, calculators, reference materials. Those are subject specific. Embedded accommodations include pop-ups, rollovers, blank graphic organizers, and writing checklists. Some of the accessibility features are text-to-speech, zoom, color and contrast, and place markers. For this year only, Grade 4 writing, the 2015 administration of the STAAR A, it is not necessary for students taking the 4th grade STAAR A writing to meet the eligibility criteria for basic transcription. This specific group of students may have their writing compositions transcribed into the online form in TestNav in accordance with guidelines listed in the accommodations triangle for basic transcription. This is not a requirement of the administration. Decisions regarding this provision must be based on individual student need. Students in all other grades and subjects must meet the eligibility for basic transcription as described in the corresponding document. I would begin to work with 4th grade on keyboarding, and hopefully in your writing classes you will be doing some compositions using the keyboard and word processor, because probably this accommodation will not be allowable next year. Technology restrictions. A special note regarding technology. Districts are required to have procedures in place to prevent the use of cell phones and personal electronic devices during testing administration. Electronic devices can disrupt the testing environment and compromise the security and confidentiality of the test. So when using technology-based accommodations such as a calculator, students are not permitted internet access during testing. Also, electronic devices with internet and photographic capabilities are not allowed by student or teacher. Everyone, teacher and every student, will be required to sign a cell phone oath stating that they do not have any electronic device that has any of these capabilities. And I would encourage you to have your students leave these devices at home on that day. Teachers will take those up, the ones who do bring them to school, and keep them in your classroom, and you will make sure that the power is turned off. Teachers may not have their cell phones on the days of testing. Answer documents. The student will complete the booklet number up at the top of their answer document. The student will write that in. You need to actively monitor, closely watch, and make sure that the student is recording the booklet number accurately, because this will be part of the scoring process, so that needs to be an accurate number. The test administrator, which will be the small group administrators and also the homeroom administrators, will then fill in the test taken information. You'll bubble in English, the bubble for English, the EN, and then you'll enter the form number as digits, and then bubble in the appropriate numbers underneath. On the answer documents, any of the recording of the accommodations on the answer documents, I will fill in all of these bubbles. The only exception will be the test administrator will complete these in TAMs for the STAAR A online administration. I will complete all the paper test accommodations. Okay, some good news. Lunch will be provided for testing personnel each testing day. And when we say testing personnel, we mean every single grade level, whether or not you are administering a test or not, because our lunch monitors will be involved in testing, so they will not be doing lunch duty that day. So every teacher will be required to eat lunch with their classroom, whether or not that class is taking a test or not. So lunch will be provided. Together we've got this. Hang in there just a minute more. There are 3 things that I need from you before completing your training. Be sure that you have signed the training sign-in sheet. If you are watching this online, I need you to stop by my office and sign the sign-in sheet. You will then need to turn in 2 signed oaths. One is your cell phone oath. The other is your test security oath. And thirdly, if you are a test administrator, you will need to sign out your test administrator's manual. You will need to sign it back in at the end of April because these must be retained for a period of 1 year. Once you have completed these 3, then you have now completed your test administrator training. Thank you.